So all the lines on the hands are formed by your brain. And if we can change your way of thinking through meditation or even just opening up your mind to different books or different cultures and ideas, that actually changes the lines on your hands. We ran a clinical study in a prison, psychiatric prison in Pakistan a number of years ago. And these were people highly stressed who were literally a captive audience. A lot of them were on medication for their mental health issues. And after, I think it was 48 days of using our music, we got half of them off their medication. But one thing I believe is at the end of 2026, there's going to be a financial disaster in the world. Hello, my name is Dr. Sulabh Jain. I'm from Sydney. I have a background in palmistry and I love all things spiritual. When I was a little kid, my grandfather started teaching me palmistry. And as I grew up, my father got me into software engineering. So I went from one extreme of spirituality to the other extreme of modernity, technology, engineering, and that kind of thing. After high school, I graduated as a software engineer and started up my first tech company, did really well in the dot-com bubble. Then on the other side of that, decided to get into palmistry full time. However, when I was in high school, I wanted to be a heavy metal guitar player. Back then, I had hair and it was all the way down to my shoulders. And so I had this love of music, this love of engineering, this love of spirituality. And I think for most of my young adult life, I didn't know how to combine a lot of these different passions together. A led to B, B led to C, which led me right back to A again. I think, like a lot of people, I was just running around in circles, trying to figure out I should stop running around in circles and just let everything come together. And I think that's what's brought me here on the channel today.
Yeah, it is definitely. I'm interested because you are doing something which is related to spirituality. Was there a moment in your life where you kind of discovered spirituality?
Yeah, for sure. So, as I said, my grandfather was teaching me palmistry from a very, very young age. My other grandfather was also deeply spiritual. He used to train Jain monks back in the 1970s. So, monks would come to his house to learn different scriptures and things like that. So, I think it was the influence of both my grandfathers, but then I say that it's probably past life stuff as well.
That has definitely a strong influence. And you were studying scriptures as well, or you just were around and you listened to it and
Yeah, so during my teenage years, my heavy metal phase, I was very much an atheist. Didn't believe any of this stuff, even though I knew the stuff worked and I knew it was all real. That's when I segued into engineering. I think after like the sale of my company, I just got obsessed with reading scriptures and different, not just from one religion, from all over the world. So what I discovered was that everyone's really saying the exact same thing. It's really just about calming your mind down and connecting to a higher source. And they all say it in different words, and the books can be this thick or this thick. It's just those two steps. That one sentence is really all there is to it.
wasn't it just a lucky situation? So I understand you sold your company and that gave you some freedom to do this kind of studies. Is that right?
Yes and no. I think you have to have a calling for it. Some people make a lot of money and then they become alcoholics and drug addicts. Other people follow their passion. And I was just lucky that I had mature people around me to get me to follow my passion.
That was not your bandmates, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Wasn't it?
Because like it's very famous, rock and roll, and then we have sex, drugs, and rock and roll. So you were
Yeah,
lucky to being inclined. Something called you there, I guess, no?
100%. And in many ways, music is its own form of meditation. Yeah, every spiritual culture has its own musical tradition. So without knowing it, I think I might have been meditating. When you sit down practicing an instrument for hours and hours, you get into that zone and the whole world around you just shuts down. That's really the beginning of meditation.
Yeah, it seems like something mechanical you are doing. But when one does something repeatedly, there's like an opening up a kind of a space
Yeah,
where spirit can come in, I understand.
that's right. And especially when you do it with joy.
Yes, joy is very good. I agree. I like joy somehow sometimes is like a compass, no? It shows us where to go.
Everyone knows intuitively what they're interested in and what they're not. I think the biggest mistake a lot of people make is we get in our own way, trying to follow what we want instead of what makes us truly happy.
So there is this spiritual teaching, and there is this knowledge, and there's some interest in the non-material world. But then on the other hand, you have a very strong activity that actually brings us back to this body, because you're like reading hands, and then you can, from these hands, you can know stuff about a person, and you can predict even the future, what will happen. And that seems to be a very strong link between something that's completely immaterial and something that is so material. There's some truth in the matter. Uh, can I say that, or how's your point of view about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So palmistry is a deeply spiritual tool. It's actually built or established by ancient Indian monks. And they were also the Ayurvedic doctors of their day, the mathematicians, astronomers. They had all the intellectual knowledge. So most of Indian society was built by its monks. And a lot of this isn't like voodoo or mystical silliness. There's actually a strong rational basis to it. So most of the lines on the hands, they're formed by the brain. And you can actually tell how someone thinks based on the lines off their hand. So I'm not just predicting their future, I'm predicting who they are. And from that, I can tell where their future is headed.
Yeah, some people even they pursue like the reading the face. Then there's these people. There's some famous French guy who can read your whole body posture, your movements, the way you move through the world, and they can read that. For normal people, this is kind of, we are ignorant, we are blind, we don't have any form of interpretation about that. But it seems there's such a strong synergy. So, and it leads me directly to this essential philosophical question: do we have free will, or is everything already laid out in our body, in our hands, in our faces, in our movements? What will happen to us?
So the answer is yes, we have free will, and also yes, that everything's predetermined as well. So the way I look at it is when I read someone's hand, I'm looking at four main variables. There's four main types of karma. There's the karma that you created in your past life that you bring into this life. There's the karma you've created within this life itself. There's your family karma, and then the karma of your society. So, what I want to know is what are these four variables and how have they impacted this person? The decisions you've made in this life is through your own free will, but the consequences of those decisions in the future, you can't change those once you've made that decision. So, let's say, for example, you're at school, you want to become an engineer one day, you work really hard towards that. Once you pass your exams, it's inevitable that you'll become an engineer. So there's A and B, and A always leads to B. And that's really the connection we're trying to track.
But that's like cause and effect. It seems like even then, if people like try to avoid their future, or they like to of what normal people do is like, okay, now we I learned this new technique, I'm practicing this and that, so I can manipulate my life to be a successful person, to be loved, to be rich, to be famous. That's what many people do.
That's right. And ultimately, you can change your future. But this cause and effect, the Indian word for it is karma. Every action has a reaction. Some things you're in charge of, and but once you're aware of this pattern in your life, you can modify it to get the success that you want, however it is that you define success. If, for example, one of the best indicators of marriage on your hand is a line for your maternal grandmother, your mother's mother. If that line on your hand is broken or distorted, that means you're going to have a difficult relationship or a difficult marriage in your life. And the logic behind this is your maternal grandmother teaches your mother how to love, and either in a positive way or a negative way. It's your mother who teaches you how to love, either in a positive or negative way. So if your maternal grandmother had struggles in her life, or if she didn't know how to express herself, then you're going to have that same dysfunction. But the way to break that chain is to learn about it, grow through it, and then become a better person. And as you do that, then you can have the relationship you want. Does that make sense? It's ultimately it's wisdom that breaks your karma.
It does make sense, and I strongly believe like the divine also brings us to certain experiences, or maybe even we ourselves as a soul had been part of this. Like we decide, okay, we want to evolve, we want to learn, we want to grow, we want to expand. So we decide that when we go into this human form, we want to have certain types of experiences. Those allow us to have this expansion. And yeah, so, and all of this is kind of laid out before we even start in this adventure.
The general template from your past life karma that you bring into this life is there, but then you can fill in the details however you want. You can have three marriages or you can have one. It's up to you.
So we have, that's the free will we have, right?
That's right.
And so those people, those are very materialistic. They would ask, okay, there's this line in my hand. Yeah, come on, where does it come from? I mean, how is the connection? Is it my mind that creates the line? Is it some magic? Is it what's happening?
It's definitely not magic. Let me start by saying that. Back in 2018, I finished my PhD. As a Vidya Vachaspati degree. Study Vidya Vachaspati, by the way, means ancient knowledge. So studying palmistry and combining it with modern psychology. So we studied childhood trauma and how it produces lines on the hands. So all the lines on the hands are formed by your brain. And if we can change your way of thinking through meditation or even just opening up your mind to different books or different cultures and ideas, that actually changes the lines on your hands. Now, I've got a lot of clients I've been seeing over the years. I give them a meditation to do. Then 6 months later, I can show them you've grown this line here, you've got rid of that bad one, and just simple things like this.
Wow, that sounds very interesting. That's what I just wanted to ask. If you ever saw it like a changing hand.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so that's great news. We got hope. We can change for the better.
Ultimately, as I said, it all comes down to wisdom. The more you learn about yourself and the more you grow, the better your life gets in every angle.
And so you did something which is kind of related to being an academic and executing science. And then you talk about these stuff that is not touchable, that's immaterial, that's something people have a hard time, or maybe if they approach it, they just approach it from a point of believing something. How did you experience this situation doing this in a normal society?
Well, that comes down to my own silliness. As I said, I was an engineer and a spiritual person at the same time. And I guess most of my karma in this life is just to bridge those two worlds together. In ancient India, as I said before, the mathematicians were the astronomers and the astrologers and the palm readers and the doctors. They did everything together. So it was always a rational system. For example, if you look at someone's fingernails, you can tell a lot about their health, according to ancient Ayurvedic tradition. It's only in the last 20 to 30 years that modern medicine has finally come to catch up to that. So it's not something that's, deeply mystical or something that you must have faith to believe in. It's literally just predicting patterns. Like that grandmother example I gave you before, if that's a situation in your life, let's say your grandmother had a horrible marriage, that's happening in your life, you can track that through psychology.
So there's a real opportunity maybe for medical people, for doctors and people those help in therapy or something to use it as a diagnostic tool.
Absolutely. So, fingernail analysis is being taught in medical schools all around the world right now. And in every psychology university curriculum, they teach meditation and mindfulness. These are things people have known for thousands of years that help, but we're only just awakening to the idea that, yes, it actually does help. And you can quantify scientifically how much it helps.
I wonder about yourself. Do you have also in your normal life, you have some activities, those are related to devotion? Do you pursue a certain religion or some spiritual practices?
Yes, so I have two teenage sons. So if I didn't meditate every day, I'd be going crazy. So yes, I've been meditating for a long time, since my late teens, early 20s, and it's just become a fundamental part of my daily routine now. What I find is the hardest part with beginning meditation is to start the routine. It's like getting a gym membership. You go the first week, you might go half the days in the second week, then eventually it trails off. You just need the self discipline to get the routine started. And once it is, then your results just grow exponentially from there.
And your meditation does also have some relation to a certain lineage of religious roots or some religion or some maybe a spiritual master or something, or is it just a technical thing?
Well, I'll answer your first question. I follow the Indian tradition, which is the Indian word for it is Sanatan Dharam. Sanatan means eternal, and Dharam means righteousness or a way of life. So it's the way of life that it worked 1,000 years ago, today, and 1,000 years from now. And this is an umbrella term for Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism, all the Indian traditions. And what they're really trying to do is get you to be mindful in the present moment with the idea that you silence the mind and you stop overthinking and you stop trying to interact with the world through your mind. As you start to do that, your true self will start to reveal itself. So the real trick in meditation is just to quieten the mind down or to get you to the point where you can slow the mind down so your true self comes out.
And that's very important that we connect to our true self, or this is the moment, this life. I mean, if we miss the chance to connect to our higher self or our true nature, we miss the whole point somehow.
That's right. And without wanting to sound like a schizophrenic, in within your mind, there are two voices. There's your voice of what you think you want in the world. Then there's your true voice, which is what you're actually going to get in the world. And a lot of times we struggle away from what we're going to get or what's in our best interest for what we want. You might want that job promotion, but actually you're going to get fired and go down the path that you actually want to be in or need to be in. And that's really what the disconnect for most people is spiritually. We think we're in charge of our life, but we're actually not. There's a truer, higher self that's in charge of us. That's the self that's connected to the divine.
When you say two voices, the characters that come into my mind is like there's the ego and then there's God.
And that's exactly the same thing, the voice of your ego and the voice of your inner God.
Yeah, so this is what we are kind of looking for a connection to God or to the divine source that created us.
Yeah, for sure. And there's lots of different ways to do it. Every tradition has their own system. That's why I like the Indian expression Sanatan Dharam. It works everywhere throughout all time and all cultures.
One lineage I'm really very invested in and I find so fascinating and so helpful for my own life is Advaita Vedanta, the concept of non-duality.
Yeah, so I've read a lot on Hinduism and all these different Vedanta philosophies. Non duality, I think, is really just a starting point. Because ultimately the goal of the Vedas and Vedanta is to connect you to the higher source, whatever noun you want to put on that higher source. So non-duality is the first step to that, because if you believe that we're separate from each other or we're separate from the room we're in, then you're caught up in what we call Maya or illusion. And it's only once you silence your mind that you really do start to connect to that. When you realize that everyone is connected, there's no self, therefore there's no duality.
Some people, when they meditate or when they pursue some spiritual practice, they get from their master or they just saw it on the internet and they say, okay, I'm doing some mantras. I'm going to use Om Mani Padme Hum, and then let's see what's happening. I'm doing some like abracadabra, you know. I use, I just use that because Dalai Lama does. So if I do it, maybe I can reach the same height.
So it's more than just reciting simple words. Firstly, the use of mantras is extremely powerful. There's actually a project I'm working on where we figured out a way to reverse engineer Hindu mantras and embed their frequencies into music as a health therapy. And so let me just explain how this works. Um, in the ancient world, if you were sick, you'd go to a monk who'd give you a mantra to recite. And people would just think, if I just say these few magical words, then I'll magically get better. But what actually happened is, in reciting that mantra, it would force you to breathe at a regular rate. And in regulating your breath, that would regulate your heartbeat. And in fixing that, that would fix most of your ailments. So different mantras force you to breathe at different rates, meaning at different frequencies. And the ideal frequency is 60 heartbeats per minute. That's actually the reason the ancient Indians put 60 seconds in a minute. If you've ever wondered why aren't there 100 seconds in a minute, or why don't they just change the definition of what a minute is to 100ths like everything else? Now, the ideal resting heart rate is 60, because if your heart rate falls below that, you fall asleep. If it's too high above that, you're too alert to do anything. So once you're at 60 beats per minute, you start to get into that Samadhi state. And so what we figured is, if we could just find the mantras that would regulate your heartbeat down to 60, then you could listen to this music with the frequencies underneath it that would relax your heart rate, and then we could give you the health benefits that you need. And the ultimate health benefit is actually just to sleep better. Because 99% of people can't sleep properly or they wake up really tired. That's because their heart's too active and because their mind is too active when their head hits a pillow. So when they wake up, their mind is still trying to rest and relax.
60 beats per minute is my favorite, velocity. I intuitively, that's actually what I used when I did concerts for relaxation in yoga centers. That was my main go-to place, exactly for what you described. You're not kind of sleeping, although some people they really drifted off, you know, when you gave them the chance to relax a little bit. They're like, okay, and then you hear them snoring, but that just adds a little texture. So this is so awesome. Yeah, it's beautiful. But then there's isn't there something else? You talk about the heart rate, you talk about the breathing pattern, and but somehow when it is explained, of course, people talk about something, something powerful in the words. Is there something else, or is that it?
No, no, there is definitely something else. I explain it via heartbeats and breathing patterns because that's something measurable and observable. So that's the engineering brain within me. But then there are sacred syllables like Om Mani Padme Hum. The Om is the sacred symbol, sacred sound. If you get that right, then the rest of the mantra flows very naturally to you. So for your viewers, try this as an experiment. Try to recite Om Mani Padme Hum, but do it in 4-second intervals, meaning you stretch Om across 2 seconds and Mani Padme Hum across the next 2 seconds. Or you could also do one per second, just vary it to figure out what works best for you. But if you get that at that regular one syllable per, how would you say, one word per second, then you'll start to get into that natural flow space too. But you have to get the arm correct. If you get that pacing right, everything else happens. And yes, there's a mystical, secret, super science behind that.
It's very, very interesting, and I found that that's the first time I hear like about how to put it into a time frame, so it works even better doing this. I
Absolutely.
like to
So
chant Om. I like to chant Om. I sing overtones, so I'm just sounding Om, and sometimes then I start doing these overtones, whereas there's like a harmonic natural scale. You can do like you make two tones at the same time, and you travel through that scale, and yeah, it transforms completely my perception.
So just to explain the maths behind that, you know how I said there's 60 seconds in a minute? There's 60 minutes in an hour. So 60 times 60 is 360, which is the number of degrees in a circle. So the Earth rotating around the sun is 360 degrees, which is why we have 365 days in a year, because it's not a perfect circle, it's slightly elliptical. So in the ancient world, they rounded that off to 360. Now, that number, sorry, if we make 60 seconds divided by 100, it becomes zero point 0.6. And that's very close to the golden mean ratio, 0.618. So all life on Earth grows across that 0.618 ratio, even the notes in a scale. So the distance in frequency between A and B times 1.618 is the distance between B and C in frequency, and same for C and D and E, F, G, and so on. So what you're doing as you're going up through these different scales is you're actually regulating your breathing as you do so. It's all got a mathematical structure, and it all comes back to 60 beats per second. I'm sorry, 60 beats per minute.
Yeah, and it is fascinating because you are talking about the perfect world. You are talking about something that's in harmony with the world. So there must be this other thing that, like people, those are far away from being aligned with this rhythm and with this structure and with this yeah, it's organized. It's so some people, they might be in a kind of a distortion. Is that right?
That's right. I mean, when I was listening to heavy metal, most of my heavy metal friends were all depressed. We didn't know it at the time, but that's what the E minor scale does. It just makes you depressed, which makes you angry, right? So you can tell a lot about a person by the style of music they listen to because there's always a key signature underneath it. And if that key signature has notes that are in majors or minors, that will distort your thinking accordingly.
Is there something wrong about minors? Oh my God.
Well, not particularly. I mean, because they're all just natural human emotions. That's why they call the blues, because it's across six different notes and with two minors in there. So that's what gets people depressed. Whereas people who listen to jazz are usually chill and relaxed. So your moods are determined by the music you listen to and vice versa. It just becomes a feedback loop.
Some people, they love blues. They don't care, you know. They want to stay there. You give them something that maybe is more uplifting or whatever, and they say, "Wow, I don't like that. Stop this."
Exactly. And, my kids, one of them listens to rap music and I hate it. I can't stand it. My other son listens to jazz and I'm not the biggest fan of that. But that's because my own personal frequencies aren't in alignment with those frequencies.
Yeah, but you can't like shake them and say, "Stop this. You gotta listen to something else. It will be better for you."
Exactly. So people go through their own natural journeys. Just as they change the genre of music they listen to over their years, they change their moods accordingly. And if you think back to when you were obsessed with one particular genre, and all of a sudden you woke up one day and didn't really want to listen to it, you listened to something else, it's because there was an inner change going on within you.
When you talk about generating a system where you transform a mantra, which has a certain expression, a certain frequency, a certain breathing pattern, into something that is mechanically or electrically reproduced, so someone can just put on their headphones and listen to that and have the benefits of it. It sounds a little bit, like they have these new gyms where you actually do not have to lift some weights. They just put some electrical thing on your body and it starts activating your muscles, and your muscles work on themselves because there's electricity, and you start sweating and you're not actually doing anything because it's all like pushed through the machine into the body.
In the olden days, people had active lifestyles. Let's say you're a farmer, you'd be digging or plowing your whole day, and that was your exercise. Since the industrial age, we've all started to work behind a table or at a desk somewhere. That's the need for exercise today. What's really missing is right now, I believe we're in the information age, and so technology is really starting to take over everything. So what I've done is just figured out how to use modern technology using an ancient methodology. It sounds like it's something like groundbreaking, but this system has been in place for thousands of years. We're just putting it on an iPhone. That's all it is.
It is, and hopefully it can be helpful. I really wish that. And but still, I mean, people, there's the opportunity you chant the mantra for yourself in a way. Although it promises something more, because maybe I think, okay, I'm gonna chant the mantra, but then I'm not sure if I'm doing it right. I'm not sure if it's the right mantra. I'm not sure, yeah, if it's the right speed and everything. And now you present something ready-made. It's it's the perfect ingredient. It's the perfect measurement. It's everything is solved in that way. And will there still be a difference? I mean, using this technology, maybe it's more efficient, or just going the old way and I'll do it myself.
So the technology is definitely more efficient. We ran a clinical study in a prison, psychiatric prison in Pakistan a number of years ago. And these were people highly stressed who were literally a captive audience. A lot of them were on medication for their mental health issues. And after, I think it was 48 days of using our music, we got half of them off their medication. And so it worked brilliantly, but it took 48 days to do so. But these people who were like, murderers, drug dealers, gangsters like that, we couldn't get them to sit down and meditate for 10 minutes a day. So if it came down to their self-discipline, it might take them 10 or 20 years to get to the point that they can sit for 10 minutes. This was just a shortcut method. At the end of the day, you still do need your self-discipline, but if you can have like a technology that can just supercharge it to make that journey easier, then I say that's a great thing.
Absolutely, that sounds fantastic. And I may ask, how long were they exposed to this kind of music? You just put it in the loudspeakers of the prison, or what did you do?
No, so we went through a university in Pakistan, had to get ethics approval and everything else for it. And we gave them a tablet, and each inmate would come in and listen to this for 15 minutes per day. So we had doctors monitoring them and everything.
Did they have to use headphones, or they just hold the tablet and listen to it through the tiny speakers in the device?
So we were using a binaural effect. What that means is we put one frequency in one ear and a different frequency in the other ear. That's what forced the brain to average the two out. That in turn went straight to their heart rate.
So they use headphones.
Yes, and that was actually one of the stumbling blocks in getting ethics approval. One of the objections they had at the prison was you can't give people wired headphones because they'll just use it as a weapon to strangle each other. So we had to find all different workarounds for this, and it took a good 18 months just to get the ethics approval through.
So did they use wireless headphones?
Yeah, we ended up using wireless.
Okay. They still could use their headphone to hit someone in the head.
Yeah, just throw the earpod at someone. Yeah.
So how long did they listen? Like every day for a minute, for 3 hours?
Every day for 15 minutes for 48 days.
That's very little. That's not
Yeah,
that's not so much.
that's right. Ultimately, the idea is as you regulate your heartbeat, you train yourself to think differently. That's what really gets you into that Zen space. So you can't just listen to it once, just as you can't recite a mantra once and expect your life to magically change. You have to do it over time. And that's what rewires your brain, and that's what changes your life.
That's fantastic. There's so much potential in music. People don't recognize this. It's kind of mind blowing, you know.
I was just going to say the first sound we hear is our mother's heartbeat when we're in her womb. And if she's at that relaxed space at 60 beats per minute, then that's usually the kids who are born with very little health issues. But if she's highly stressed, then serotonin and other chemicals come into her bloodstream, which comes into yours. So music precedes even our birth.
Wow. Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, it is such a strong power, and it's kind of neglected by until now. It's very neglected by the healthcare system. I mean, even like people don't care about noise because we have so much noise in our society. You know, I mean, I'm living in the countryside and still I hear there's this farmer there, he has a machine running, and there's the traffic of cars running through. There's always, even if I walk through the woods, I still hear some noise of machines somewhere. And all of this, this must affect us as well. I mean, quite similar.
No, no, definitely. We're all conditioned to react to different noises in different ways. Everybody loves the sound of a stream. Everyone loves the sound of birds singing. Everyone hates the sound of a loud motorbike, for example. It distorts the way, well, it snaps us out of our way of thinking. That in turn changes our heart rate, changes our breathing, and everything too. So, really, the way to tell it is, does it make you feel harmonious or does it make you distorted? And that's the way. If you listen to like the stories of Buddha, he said that he was so detached from everything around him that there was no sense objects that would disturb him. So he could listen to a motorbike and not and maintain his equanimity. He could smell the worst, I don't know, feces or whatever, and still maintain his equanimity. He could go through any sensory experience and be the same. So that's the state we have to get to. That's the ideal.
Yeah, that means that we are really deeply rooted and connected to our true nature. And so we are unshakable because we are more aware or more based on this, which is like infinite, and which is, yeah, it's what we really are. Although I guess like 99% of society is still very much attracted by the external world and by things those are happening, and so much distraction around us, you know.
But I find even that's changing. I mean, when I was younger, it might have been 99.9% of people who are attracted by the material world. Now, as you say, it's probably 90, and in a generation, it'll be probably 50%. There's more and more people awakening spiritually now. So there's so much changes going on in the world. And this modern technology is bringing ancient knowledge literally within our palm now.
So when will this product be available for my iPhone, or will it be on Android as well? What's the plans for that? Is it released already?
So we actually had an app about 2 years ago, but I had a falling out with a business partner of mine. So we're just starting to rebuild the app now. We're looking out for investors and trying to get this out to the world soon. So yeah, it'll be on the iPhone or iOS, and it'll be on Android too.
So is there so when people want to connect with you, so they will be announced the release of the app. What should they do?
Well, jump on our website at chariotpalmistry.com and we'll have an announcement over there.
And that's something completely different to what you do with your palmistry business, right? It's kind of yeah, or do you see a connection there?
So ultimately, the connection is we're trying to get people to live better lives. So music and palmistry are obviously completely different things. And as I said at the start of this interview, most of my life is just having these different things and figuring out how to bring them together.
Yeah, the world is a complete thing.
Yeah.
There's so many things to do. And another thing I was wondering about that you are actually on your YouTube channel, which will be in the description as well. You sometimes do predictions. And then I think, where's this coming from? You're reading your own hand and then you can tell what the future brings? Or how do you do that?
So I make stock market predictions and cryptocurrency predictions on my YouTube channel. Again, these all have a mathematical basis too. So they follow the golden mean ratio. If you're into technical analysis, you'll see that prices go up by a ratio of 1.618, meaning if a stock is, say, $100 today and it's going up, then it'll stop going up at $161.80. So there are these mathematical ratios, which are also the ratios between the different nodes and also the different planets. So the distance between Earth and Mercury is a ratio. It's a distance between, say, the node A and B, like if that makes sense. So all I'm doing is using the same mathematical ratios that I use in music and applying them to stocks. It's that simple. So we know reliably when spring is every year because the sun rises over the eastern horizon with a certain zodiac in the background. So if you multiply that ratio out by 1.618, then you can apply that to, let's say, Microsoft stock or Bitcoin. So again, it's very simple, but if you don't know the maths behind it, it looks like they're very different fields of study.
So there's this invisible force, the mathematic force, the mathematic structure, the like a net of mathematics beyond everything. Also in palmistry, is there mathematic in palmistry?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I hold my index finger up, the ratio of the first phalange of my finger to the second phalange is 1.618. So that ratio multiplied by 1.618 is that one. That multiplied by 1.618 is that third knuckle. And then my finger to the whole palm is 1.618. Then the whole wrist to the elbow is 1.618. So you just keep multiplying it out. It's the human body, the flowers, trees, everything, the solar system, you name it.
Wow, yeah, that's something that really most of us are not aware of in any way. It's it's very
Right.
fascinating.
Yeah. And that's what I was saying before. It looks or it may sound like this is superstition or something like that, but it's far from it. The same structure at the center of the universe is what creates these predictions.
And you are using your own knowledge, your studies, your mathematic, your programming skills. And now we have like a new situation. We have artificial intelligence coming in, and it's like the next. It's the promised land. It's like the next big thing, and everyone's like, "Yeah, let's go!" And then there's these big corporations. They see it as a huge opportunity to make more profits. Maybe even, I most probably believe that they are like looking into us. By we use it and we think, oh, it's so cool, but everything is written down, everything is noted, everything is analyzed. And what is your take on that new opportunity?
So let me just say, I remember when I was in engineering college 25 plus years ago, I hated the subject they taught us on AI. For whatever reason, I just didn't get along with it. But one thing I want you to notice is now we were talking about different ratios. The ratio for Saturn to transit the sun takes place every 30 years. And AI has just become big now. But if we go back in time 30 years ago, that's when the internet started entering the mainstream. So AI is really just the next ratio after the internet. If you go back 30 years before 1995, it was 1965. That's when the oil boom really started. That was the big technology of the day. And 30 years before then, in the mid 1930s, was when alternating current electricity started. It's also the beginning of, well, not really the nuclear age, but very close to the development of nuclear weapons. So every 30 years, there's a huge growth spurt with the new technology. So we can predict 30 years from now will become the next AI or the next super technology, maybe in 2055, if my maths is right. So just off that basis, to understand what's happening with AI or what will happen with it, look at what happened to the dot-com bubble 30 years ago. It did great up in for the first 5 years, then first 5 or 6 years. In 2001, the whole thing crashed. So it's very easy to predict this AI mania is going to crash 6 years after it starts. So one thing we were able to do on our channel on Chariot Palmistry is we actually predicted not the dot-com bubble, the AI bubble starting. So I was able to get a lot of my followers into like Google and Nvidia just before this whole thing blew up.
Right. But is there still hope? I mean, we have these technologies coming in, and then, as you said, there's electricity. Well, we have light in the night. Wonderful. We can have machines, we have all kinds of help. But then there's also, they created nuclear bombs. And it's like, it seems like it's so important that somehow we understand, no, our connection to our true self, to something benevolent, because it's so important how we use this technology. And then I see these greedy companies, and they're just they seeing money, 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 power, 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 and it's
Absolutely.
dangerous. What's with the rest of society? We're kind of internet. I mean, we are fooled. It starts so nicely. We can communicate. Okay, I can chat with someone in Japan, and then it turns out, no, no, no. You have to be on Facebook, and Facebook is looking at you, but it actually just wants to sell you something.
Definitely. I mean, you can use the internet to find research that cures cancer, or you can use the internet to build Facebook and make people depressed. How you use it, sorry, how you use the technology, of course, is up to the person. But ultimately, the whole world is getting better because of the internet.
So hopefully your software can help people to relax, because maybe then they can like connect with their true nature, and then they are the influence, and then they themselves can be the projector of certain frequencies, those influence other to relax as well. That's
Exactly.
my wish. That's my wish.
I hope so. When you're around an angry person, you become angry. When you're around a calm, settled person, you become calm. So the more calm people we have in the world, the more calmness there'll be in the world. It'll just grow exponentially.
Well, let's pray for that. So, maybe at this point we can close this conversation, and maybe there's something which might surge now, which might arise. You would like to say to the listeners, which is some information or something you feel like to share.
Yes, maybe this will sound like a negative note, but one thing I believe is at the end of 2026, there's going to be a financial disaster in the world. Again, using different ratios of mathematics, it goes every 18 years. So if you go back in time 18 years before 2026, you get to the late 90s. I'm sorry, not late 90s, you get to the GFC back in 2008. If you go 18 years before that, that's 1990, there's a big recession in the world. So the next big one is at the end of 2026. At that time, we're going to notice a lot of people being depressed because when the material world crashes, mental health problems go up. At the same time, people start searching for spirituality. So in 27, 28, 29, 30, you'll see a huge awakening of people. That's the note I want to end on. We've got about 18 bleak months in front of us, but then the kick up starts just after that.
Okay, there's hope, and actually, it's like a not so nice message. But then maybe some people they need like this little push, like they we get into trouble, but then it's like, I heard these stories about the soldiers, they're at the front and they're like about to die. And that's the moment they start praying to God.
Yeah,
And
true.
it's a sad thing that we have to go this far, but sometimes it's well, in Catholic they call it via crucis, like you go through the suffering which leads you to God. It's a little bit sad because why do we have to suffer?
True. But if you look at COVID and the spike in mental health that created, you could divide the world up into two phases. One half of the world completely destroyed themselves during COVID. The other half accelerated their spiritual growth during COVID. So I know so many people, most of all of them are spiritual, who had a great time during the lockdowns. It was their best time. Now, I know a lot of people who just absolutely hated it. So it can time accelerates growth. And that's what I'm saying. The end of next year, there's either a period where you grow a lot exponentially or you decline a lot exponentially. It's just up to you to pick which way you want to go.
People, I urge you to pick the right path. Just see it as an opportunity and yeah, you know, don't look outside for all these things happening. Just relax and maybe take the opportunity to connect with your inside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Hans. It was a pleasure being here today.
Thank you very much for your time, Sulap. And all the links will be in the description. And see you next time.
Thank you, everyone.